All right, well, welcome to 155. Hi. Hi. Let me tell you, I am still recovering from yesterday. I couldn't believe what a huge party we had. It was just crazy. It's like, we had like everybody in the swimming pool, and then we had like that huge squirt gun fight, and then I can't believe how much chicken nuggets we ate. It was awesome, like all this Chick-fil-A stuff, and then Steve brought like the queso and the chips and stuff, and it was so great. And then we had that huge video game tournament inside on the big screen TV. Remember how much fun that was? It was awesome, huh?
Yeah.
Who all here was at my party yesterday?
I didn't even know it was a thing. I wasn't there.
Oh, there was no party yesterday. I'm sorry. Was everybody wondering? It's like, wait, what is this guy talking about? Have you ever gone to school on a Monday and everybody's talking about the cool thing they did over the weekend and you're just like, never quite got the invite on that whole situation? Anybody? Nobody here has ever been left out? Yeah, right. Okay. And it always seems like those guys, when they're telling you about what happened, it's like this huge elaborate story, and they just probably make it out better than really what it was, right? They're like, dude, it was so awesome. We had like pounds of queso and chips and stuff, and it's really like two guys sharing a little bowl of queso. But when they tell the story, it's so much bigger. It's like, we were having a huge squirt gun fight, and they both had these little tiny squirt guns. They're like just shooting each other in the face, right? It's just like, but stories kind of blow this thing out of proportion. And everybody likes a good story. Has anybody here ever sat around a campfire and told ghost stories before? Only a couple of you. I know we got some Boy Scouts up in this room. There's got to be some Boy Scout stuff happening. It's camp. Does anybody have like that old grandpa or uncle that always tells like the longest, most confusing stories that you've ever heard, right? And you're just like, where are they going with this story? And then by the time they're finished, they don't even, it's just like, and then we got there. And you're like, what? It's kind of like, have you ever had one of those super, super crazy dreams, and then you tell somebody about your dream, and then you realize that you are insane because your dream, you're just like, yeah, so we were all there at the arcade, and you were there, but it really wasn't you. You look like Steve, and then there was a dolphin, and we were chasing it, and then it ran up on the shore, and it turned into a monkey, and then Steven turned into Melissa, but they were a couple, and you're like, people are looking at you, you're like, wait a second, I'm crazy. Because when you have a dream and then you try to tell somebody your dream, it's never as good as the actual dream, right? So if you like telling your friends about your crazy dreams, just stop, because they all think you are crazy. Crazy. So as we talk about stories, I wanted to share with you one of the cool things about great stories is always the opening line of the story. Always kind of sets the tone for some of the best stories out there. So I found a couple movies. I'm gonna read the first line, and we'll see if you guys can figure out what movie this first line comes from. The first one, In a Galaxy Far, Far Away. Star Wars, right? Everybody knows that. It rolls down the screen. Everybody knows. They're waiting for the music. In a Galaxy Far, Far Away. Boom, you know you are about to watch Star Wars when that happens. Next, I Shall Tell You of William Wallace.
What?
I Shall Tell You of William Wallace. Braveheart, that is right, Braveheart. All right, the next opening line of a movie is mutation. It is a key to our evolution. X-Men, that is right. How about this one? I'd never given much thought to how I would die. What? He's just shouting random words now. Steve! Blue! He doesn't know. That's right, Twilight. I'd never given much thought to how I would die. All right, let's see if anybody gets this one. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive. Oh, never mind. I don't have to read the whole thing. All right. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Yep. And the greatest intro of all time, of every movie, if it's going to be epic, it starts with Once Upon a Time, right? All the big ones start with Once Upon a Time. So, all right, here we go. Who here, raise your hand, has been coming to this church / youth / area for at least a year? Raise your hand. Woo, okay, keep them up, keep them up. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, a few, wow, look at this. 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. All right, that's enough, that's enough. There's enough of you that have been here 17 years for Hannah Woodson. 17 years. So this is what I want to talk to you guys tonight about. Is we're going to talk about 3 beautiful words. And this is what I want you to start with, and this is number 1 on your outline. This is how you should start all of your great stories. And it should start with, number 1, I was invited. I was invited. And hopefully, whether you've been here because this is your first night or you've been here for 17 years, you remember how you got to church, who invited you to church. Maybe your parents just drug you, but something got you to church. Who invited you to church? Because as you get older and you start to see God doing cool things in your life and you start to tell people about that, it should always start with, I was invited, right? Because I was invited to church and then I saw blank, 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 blank happen. I was invited. That is such an awesome way to start a story. And it's important that you give other people the opportunity to be able to say those 3 words as well. And it comes back to kind of loving the people you're around. And Tim talked about this last week and a little bit before about just kind of loving who's around you. And in the Bible, there's a story where Jesus is talking to these wise, Bible scholar type people, and they're kind of quizzing him. And one of the guys asked Jesus, like, well, what's the key to, to life, and what's the most important thing to do? And Jesus said, well, I don't know, what do you think it should be? And it's great because this is actually in Luke 10:27, it's something that a lot of times gets attributed to Jesus saying, but it wasn't Jesus, it was somebody else answering Jesus' question. And it goes like this, and it's on the screen on your outline. The guy says, he thinks his answer is, he answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So if you can do that, life will be easy. Life will be great. That is the key to success and happiness. But that last one, and I think the love God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, that's probably easier than the second half, which is love your neighbor as yourself. How do you do that? How do you love your neighbor as yourself? Well, I think first of all, if something good is happening to you, you usually share that with somebody else, right? Because if you're excited about something, if you're like, dude, I just got a $100 gift certificate to Chick-fil-A, you tell people about it, right? You're like, woo, check out what happened in my life. I'm going to burn up all 140 characters telling somebody this. It's going to be on every Snapchat story. Check me out. Because you want to share what's awesome in your life with other people. So let me ask you this. If you enjoy coming to 155, are you sharing that with other people? Are you telling people about how much fun you have on a Sunday night, or that you and your friend got to do this on Sunday night, or I ate so much pizza I almost threw up on Sunday night? Because if it's something fun and important to your life, are you sharing it with somebody else? And he says, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, who's your neighbor? It doesn't have to physically be the guy next door, that creepy guy that you probably don't go to his house. It doesn't have to be that guy. Your neighbor is really anybody that you deal with on a kind of regular basis. If you kind of know their face and maybe know their name, that's probably your neighbor. If you run across them and run into them in the street, that's probably your neighbor. So when you're talking to people about, what's important to you and everything else, you start telling them about church because that's what's important to you. And that's who you're going to tell your neighbor, and that's how you showed love to your neighbor. But if you're going to tell people about going to church, I know that's difficult and it's really confusing and it's scary because what if they laugh at you? There's an important thing to remember when talking to people about going to church, and it's number 2 on your outline. You can fill this in. It's stories matter. Stories matter. So when you tell people about coming to church, you can tell them about, hey, we get, you can tell them about hey, we get free pizza if you're a first-time guest, or we can play Smash Brothers on the TV in the back, and these crazy girls are always trying to get us to have a dance party, or we laughed so hard last week in family group, or our leader brought us popsicles, it was awesome. And you can tell them all those great things as your story, but don't forget to tell them the most important part, which is how your life has changed because of coming to 155. Because chances are, if you've been here for any amount of time, you've started to see some change in your life. Whether it's a change in your friendships because you're maybe hanging out with people that aren't quite as bad anymore, or maybe you've accidentally started, just doing better in school, or whatever the repercussions are that have happened to you, it may have happened because you're coming to 155. So when you're telling people your story, you don't want to leave out the most important part, which is what's happening in your life, how God has changed your life, how a relationship with another student or a leader here has changed your life. Because I can tell you what, your friends want to be a part of something. You want to be a part of something. Give them the opportunity to be a part of something. To be like, man, you got to come here because things are changing in me because I've been going there and remember how I used to always get in trouble and I don't anymore? And you should come check it out with me. Or maybe that's not cool enough, but you need to figure out what it is that's changed in your life and share that with somebody else. And maybe you just need to tell them about how somebody here impacted you. Maybe it's just, hey, I have this great new friend now at church, man, you should really meet her. I only get to see her on Sunday nights, but she's awesome. You should come meet her. Or, you should come, there's these old people that are hanging out up there, You should meet this guy, Danny. He always plays the music full blast and has like 3 Andy Mineo songs he only plays. Right? I mean, you never know. It's like you should meet Tim because he's a total Pokemon dork and he would love to meet you because if you're into Pokemon, so is Tim. Right? So it's like, what is the story you can tell somebody about the impact this church has made? There's a line they say in Revelation 12:11, this is on your outline and on the screen, and it says, "For they conquered the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. For they did not love their lives even in the face of death." The word of their testimony. And testimony doesn't have to be like this super religious, like, thou artist the greatest Lord of ever, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be this huge, complicated thing. It's just your story. It's just your testimony of kind of what's happened. And that's how we move forward with building relationships and building friendships and building in this church is the word of our testimony. Some of you may know some of my stories, some of you don't, so I'll share a little bit of my story/testimony with you. I came to this church about 12 years ago. With my wife and my 2 very young daughters. When I came here, I was actually an atheist. I did not believe in God. I actually argued against people that did believe in God because I thought it was fun. I'd only been here probably about a year or so when I got saved and decided that I was living life the wrong way and needed to put Jesus first. But that wasn't really the whole story. And people that grew up in church are like, oh, awesome, a salvation. But that's not really where I see the huge breakthrough. It's what God's done in my life since that time. So like several years after that, I start hanging out with this guy named Ricky Mosel. And Ricky Mosel is the youth pastor here at 155 back then. This is a decade ago. And we're hanging out or whatever, and he's like, you should come hang out in the youth group. I think you'd really like all these kids. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't. Trust me, I was a teenager. I don't want to hang out with teenagers. That's no fun at all. But after a little bit of arm twisting, he got me to come up here and start hanging out. And I really started to like it. And I started getting to know some teenagers, and it was fun and everything. And then Ricky said, no, it'd be awesome. He's like, we like to play a game before service. You should be in charge of the game. And I'm like, that sounds like a lot of responsibility. Would I have to use a microphone? He's like, yeah. Nope, I'm not in. I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound fun at all. But he kept working on me, and God was obviously working on me too. And so finally, he got me up here doing games, and I did games for a little while, like over a year, I think. I actually had to come up with the game every single week and the prizes, and it was a lot of work, but I started to enjoy it and everything. And then Ricky said, hey man, it'd be awesome if maybe you got up and preached one night. I'm like, Ricky, I told you about my past. All the things I've done, my wife and I lived together before we were married, and I've done drugs and all this other stuff. I can't be on stage in front of a bunch of teenagers telling them how to live their life because I didn't do it right. And he's like, no, that's what we need. Your story, your testimony will help them understand a little bit better. I'm like, So I got up and stumbled through probably a terrible message. I'm glad we weren't videoing them back then. I'm sure it was terrible, but I somehow made it through and found that I kind of liked it. Although you students can be, just so you know, I find you guys probably more intimidating than when I preach downstairs because you're not afraid right after the message to walk up to me and call me out on my junk if I said something wrong or anything. Adults don't do that. You teenagers, awesome at that. I love it. So now I've kind of gone through this step, and I ended up serving in the youth group for a long time, and then I stepped down for a little while just to kind of take some time off, and then as Stacia entered the youth group, I kind of came back, and I've been here kind of ever since now, and I actually got to lead the youth group for a couple years, and that was fun. But I say all that because it all started because our neighbors, when we moved here to Georgia 12 years ago, invited Tanya and I to come to this church. And then Ricky invited me to come upstairs to the youth group. And then Ricky invited me to run a game. And then Ricky invited me to do that. He invited me to take huge steps in my life that I didn't realize were huge steps at the time. It seemed like it's just kind of I'll do it. But it turned up being this huge step because he invited me. And now I have this story, this testimony because I was invited. So don't miss that opportunity to invite somebody because you don't know what God's going to do through them because of your invite. You don't have to do all the work. You don't have to bring them to church and then make sure they get it. God will take care of that if you just invite them here and give them the opportunity to be a part of this. And I've seen God do some amazing changes in some of your lives because I've been up here long enough now that I've known a lot of you since you were little kids. I've known Hannah since she was nothing. I've known Jordan a super long time. I remember when Lauren, nobody liked her. She's awesome now. I've known a lot of you since you were little. Real little. Some of you are the little siblings of other kids that were little when I was there, right? Josh and Jake both. They're both little siblings of other ones that have already come and gone through this whole thing. Same with Aaron. Another younger sibling that I thought, man, Aaron's just the little brother. And then eventually Aaron's now, a senior. Don't miss an opportunity to invite somebody because it just matters so much. So let me tell you about this next part. Number 3 on your outline is this. Everyone deserves an invite. Everyone deserves an invite. Let me give you a little, I don't know how to tell you this. Some of you are a real pain in the butt. Yeah, it's true. Some of you are a real pain in the butt. I'm looking over there, especially you, Samantha. But you were invited anyway. Somebody still took the time to invite you, and now you've seen a change in your life. So there's people you interact with on a daily basis that you're like, ugh, that person. That doesn't mean you shouldn't invite them, because everyone deserves an invite. Everyone deserves a chance to be changed, to have fun. Maybe what that person needs, because they get on your nerves so bad, is to come to church and realize that they're being that way so that they can be changed through God. And maybe then they won't be annoying anymore. Maybe. There's always a chance, right? You have to spend some time with those people that maybe aren't your perfect friends and invite them as well. And Jesus did a great job at this. Jesus really showed this all through the New Testament. And he really made a lot of people mad because, right, he shows up, I'm the Son of God, here to change the world. Everybody's like, awesome. All the super religious people are over here. We're like meeting over here. We're going to like do some super religious stuff. And he's like, no. I'm going to go over here and hang out with the prostitutes and the thieves and the killers. And they're like, whoa, no. All the religious people hang out over here. He's like, yeah, I got you. You stay over there. I'm going to go over here and hang out with these people. And this comes up in the story in Mark 2:13. And it goes like this. It says, once again, Jesus went out beside the lake. A large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. As he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him, and Levi got up and followed him. Now, just so we're clear, tax collectors, it was like they were the bottom of the barrel, really. It was like the soldiers, and then thieves, and then killers. I don't know, somewhere in there, some prostitutes and stuff, and then it was like tax collectors. It'd pretty much be like me saying today, it's like, hey, there's this guy Levi coming tonight. He collects money for ISIS. So everybody be nice to him. You'd be like, what? That's pretty much how people saw the tax collectors back then. But Jesus said, come with me. And then it says, while Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, so not only did he say, Jesus, come with me, he's like, oh, by the way, we're going to your house. Hope you're ready. They go to Levi's house for dinner. Many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. When the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and tax collectors, they asked his disciples, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? Because the religious people hung out together. They certainly didn't hang out with the tax collectors and sinners. They prayed for them at a distance. They would never associate with them at a meal or anything like that. They were way above that. And Jesus says this. He says, on hearing this, Jesus said to them, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. So let me challenge you on this. Are you only hanging out with church people? Are those your only friends or people that you do church with? Because you could be missing an opportunity. Because that's not how Jesus lived his life. He didn't hang out with church people. He hung out with people that needed church, not went to church. Now, you got to be a little bit careful about that, right? Because the Bible also says bad company corrupts good character. So if you're like, sweet, I'm going to start going to the parties on Friday night, I'm going to get all those people to come to church. Well, be careful, because you could get sucked into that as well. So you got to kind of know where that line is of what you can do. But every week, especially when you're in school, you come in contact with probably 100 people a week when you're in school that you could be inviting to church. Through sports or band or school or athletics or whatever it is that's going on, you have an ability to see people and talk to people that need to meet Jesus. So let's kind of recap. So first is, I was invited. Give somebody that opportunity to be invited so that stories will matter. Your story can help invite them, and then that can lead to them having their own story. And then everyone deserves to be invited. And I know it's difficult. I know it's hard to invite your close friends, let alone the people you're not close friends with. But maybe that's easier because you're like, hey, if I invite them and they say no, it's no big deal. I don't talk to them anyway. Right? You weren't talking with them to begin with, so what's the difference? You might as well try and invite them to church. You have that opportunity to do that. So I have some next steps. If you will flip over your connection card, there's some next steps there. I want everybody to do this with me. The first one is this. I will invite blank next week. I want you to write a name in there. I'm just going to sit here patiently while everybody writes a name in there. Who are you going to invite to church next week? You three. Write a name in there. Corey, write a name on your card. Who are you going to invite? Write it on your card. Find your card and then write it on your card. Everybody got one? There's got to be somebody you can write that you can invite next week. The next step for you is, if necessary, I will ask Jesus to save me for the first time. Because if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, it's going to be hard to have a story to tell somebody to invite them. So you need to ask Jesus into your heart tonight so that you can start your story. Because my whole story I told you about, it started with being invited, but then it really started when I asked Jesus to be Lord of my life, and he started to change it over the last decade. So you need to get that right tonight. And the third next step that you can take tonight is, I will tell my story. Find somebody tonight in Connect Group and tell them your story. What has God done for you? How have you seen your life change since you came to 155 or this church? Tell somebody your story, because somebody needs to hear that story. It's all things you can do tonight. So, I know it's hard right now with no school, and you're like, how am I going to invite people? But I think you'll find a way. People are bored. It's summer. They're like sitting at home, binge watching Netflix. They need some place to go on a Sunday night. It might as well be here. They get a free pizza, and so do you if they're a first-time guest. So you can't go wrong with free pizza. So at least invite them. Don't say they're no for them. If everybody bow their heads, we'll go to Lord in prayer. Then the band will come out and wrap this thing up for us. God, thank you for this place we get to come and just be ourselves. It's so great that we have a safe place on a Sunday night just to be with our friends and act a fool if we want. And God, I know there's people here because they were invited. And God, I know that you are creating stories in these students right now. Every day you are creating their story. And God, I just ask that you give these students the strength and the bravery to tell their story to somebody else, to invite somebody so they have an opportunity to have their life changed. God, thank you for what you're doing in this youth group and these brave students that are going to go out and invite somebody this week. In your name I pray. Amen. Coming up and worship.